Picture this: a rainforest so perfectly preserved. It looks as though time itself hit pause. Towering trees, delicate ferns, even the intricate patterns of leaves and insects, all frozen in stone, as if nature pressed them into the pages of Earth's own history book. This isn't science fiction. It's the astonishing reality of the rainforest that turned to stone, a fossilized ecosystem that whispers secrets from a world millions of years gone. What if I told you this ancient forest isn't just a relic of the past, but a message one that could reshape how we understand our planet's future? Step into the shoes of the scientists who first uncovered this petrified paradise. Imagine their awe as they brushed away layers of rock to reveal a snapshot of life from an era when continents collided, climates shifted, and the very air we breathe was different. Every fossilized trunk, every leaf imprint, is a puzzle piece in a story far grander than we ever imagined. How does an entire rainforest turn to stone? What catastrophic or miraculous events could lock an entire ecosystem in time? The answers lie buried in layers of sediment, waiting to rewrite what we know about Earth's resilience and fragility. This isn't just a tale of geological wonder, it's a mirror held up to our own world. The same forces that preserved this forest, volcanic eruptions, floods, the slow dance of tectonic plates, are still at work today. What can this ancient rainforest teach us about survival, extinction, and the delicate balance of life? As we journey through its fossilized halls, we'll uncover not just how it died, but how it speaks. Its final message isn't carved in stone for us to admire. It's a warning, a lesson, and perhaps even a guide. So let's venture into this lost world together, where every step reveals another clue to the greatest mystery of all. What does it mean to outlast time itself? The story of this fossilized rainforest begins in one of the most unlikely places, a windswept desert where the ground cracks under the sun. In the early 2000s, a team of paleontologists surveying the rocky outcrops of eastern Arizona noticed something strange embedded in the cliffs. What first looked like ordinary stone formations turned out to be the silhouettes of ancient trees, their trunks still standing upright as if frozen mid-growth. The scientists couldn't believe their eyes. One researcher later described it as walking into a ghost forest, where every step revealed another piece of a world lost to time. The scale of the discovery was staggering. Stretching across nearly 3 square miles, the site contained hundreds of petrified tree trunks, some towering over 6 feet tall, their bark preserved in such fine detail that you could still trace the grooves where insects once crawled. Even more astonishing were the leaves, delicate fern fronds, and broad tropical foliage captured in stone, their veins perfectly outlined like nature's own etchings. But how did a lush, thriving rainforest end up entombed in what's now a barren desert? The answer lies in catastrophe. Geologists pieced together a dramatic scene. Roughly 200 million years ago, this region was a humid, swampy jungle teeming with life, until a nearby volcanic eruption buried it alive. Superheated ash and debris swept through the landscape, encasing trees and plants in a thick blanket of sediment. Minerals from the ash seeped into the wood, replacing organic matter molecule by molecule until the forest turned to stone. Yet the tragedy preserved an almost miraculous snapshot. The fossils revealed not just the types of plants that grew here, but clues about the ancient climate. Thick rings in the petrified wood hinted at intense seasonal storms, while the variety of ferns suggested a warm, wet world far different from the desert today. For the scientists who uncovered it, the site was more than a collection of fossils. It was a time capsule. One paleobotanist described brushing sediment off a leaf imprint and realizing she was the first living creature to touch it since the day it fell, millions of years ago. That's the haunting beauty of this place. It doesn't just show us what was lost, it forces us to reckon with the forces that shape our planet. If a rainforest can vanish so completely, what does that mean for the ecosystems we take for granted today? The stones don't just whisper answers, they ask questions we're only beginning to understand. The transformation of a lush, living rainforest into cold, unyielding stone seems like something out of myth, but the science behind it is even more fascinating. Petrification doesn't happen by magic, it's a meticulous dance of chemistry and time. When that ancient volcanic eruption buried the rainforest, it didn't just smother the plant, it set the stage for one of nature's most astonishing preservation acts. The key lies in what happened next. As mineral-rich groundwater seeped through the ash-covered remains, it carried dissolved silica, a compound found in volcanic rock. This silica didn't just coat the trees and ferns, it infiltrated every tiny pore and cell, molecule by molecule, slowly replacing the organic material with stone. Imagine a sculptor working in reverse instead of chiseling away. Nature filled in the gaps until the original structure was perfectly mirrored in mineral form. But why silica? This particular mineral has a unique ability to replicate organic structures with almost microscopic precision. Under the right conditions, it can preserve not just the shape of a leaf, but the delicate veins that once carried water through it. Other minerals like calcite or pyrite can also fossilize organic matter, but silica's fine-grained structure makes it the gold standard for capturing intricate details. That's why this rainforest's fossils are so breathtaking. They're not rough impressions, but near-perfect replicas, down to the texture of bark or the spiral pattern of a fern frond. The speed of burial mattered just as much as the minerals. When the volcanic ash engulfed the rainforest, it acted like a snapshot, halting decay before bacteria and fungi could break down the plants. Compare that to most forests where fallen trees rot within decades. Here, the ash created an airtight seal, locking away oxygen and moisture, the very things that normally cause organic matter to crumble. It's the same principle behind famous fossil sites like Petrified Forest National Park, where logs turn to rainbow-colored stone. But this rainforest offers something even rarer, an entire ecosystem frozen in time. While petrified wood is relatively common, finding preserved leaves, insects, and even fungi in such abundance is like stumbling upon a prehistoric photograph. What makes this site extraordinary isn't just the how of its preservation, but the why. For petrification to occur, an unlikely checklist of conditions must align: rapid burial, the right minerals, stable temperatures, and minimal disturbance over millions of years. One misstep, a shift in groundwater chemistry, a tectonic upheaval, and the evidence vanishes. That's why fossilized forests of this scale are so rare. Most decompose, erode, or simply wait undiscovered beneath layers of rock. But here, the planet conspired to keep a secret, wrapping this rainforest in stone until science was ready to listen. The implications stretch far beyond geology. This level of preservation lets scientists reconstruct the ancient climate with startling accuracy. The thickness of tree rings reveals periods of drought or heavy rainfall. The types of plants found together hint at temperature ranges. Even the spacing between trees suggests how sunlight filtered through the canopy. It's as if the forest left behind a manual, not just showing us what was there, but how it all worked together. And that raises a humbling thought. If these silent stones can tell us so much about the past, what might they teach us about the future? When we see how suddenly a thriving ecosystem can be erased, and how meticulously its story can be preserved, it's impossible not to wonder what traces of our own world might survive the ages. To walk through this fossilized rainforest is to step into a world unlike anything we know today, a steamy, swampy paradise from the Carboniferous period, over 300 million years ago. Imagine air so thick with moisture that every breath feels like drinking warmth under a canopy of tree ferns stretching taller than 3-story buildings. This was an Earth where dragonflies with wingspans rivaling modern hawks darted through misty groves, and millipedes the length of cars crept through rotting vegetation. The atmosphere held nearly 50% more oxygen than today, fueling explosive growth and bizarre gigantism in creatures that would seem like monsters in our time. But it wasn't just the wildlife that thrived. This was the age when plants conquered the land in spectacular fashion. Towering lycopods, ancestors of today's humble club mosses, formed dense forests with trunks like stone pillars, while giant horsetails clustered in shallow waterways. These weren't just plants, they were Earth's first carbon capturers on a massive scale. As they grew, died, and piled into peat swamps, they locked away vast amounts of carbon, slowly cooling the planet and shaping the very air we now breathe. The coal seams we mine today, those are the compressed remains of these primordial jungles, a testament to how deeply this era shaped our world. Yet the Carboniferous wasn't a paradise without peril. The same lushness that made it thrive also sowed the seeds of its decline. Over millions of years, shifting continents disrupted the warm, wet climates these forests depended on. Glaciation crept in from the poles, sea levels fluctuated, and the once stable swamps dried or drowned, but the final blow may have come from the plants themselves. Their success at pulling carbon from the atmosphere eventually triggered global cooling, leading to harsher seasons and shrinking habitats. It's a haunting parallel to today's climate shifts, a reminder that even the most dominant ecosystems are fragile in the face of planetary change. What does this mean for the fossilized rainforest we've uncovered? Like a time capsule, it captures the Carboniferous at a tipping point. The variety of ferns and tree species preserved in stone tells us this was a diverse, resilient ecosystem, but one already feeling the strain of a changing world. Some scientists compare it to a prehistoric warning, a glimpse of how even the most vibrant environments can collapse when conditions shift too fast. The giant insects vanished, the towering lycopods retreated to smaller niches, and the age of coal forests gave way to new worlds. Yet their legacy lives on, not just in our fossil fuels, but in the lessons they left behind. When we study this petrified forest, we're not just uncovering the past, we're reading a survival guide written in stone. Buried within the stone pages of this ancient rainforest lies a botanical caste unlike any modern jungle. Towering above them all were the lycophytes' monstrous ancestors of today's tiny club mosses, with trunks thicker than oil drums and root systems sprawling like underground cities. These weren't just plants, they were living skyscrapers, some reaching heights of over 150 feet, their bark armored with diamond-shaped scales that fossilized with eerie precision. But their most striking feature, unlike modern trees, they reproduced not with seeds, but with primitive spores carried on cone-like structures, a throwback to an era before flowering plants ruled the earth. Yet the lycophytes didn't reign alone. Between their massive trunks grew sprawling thickets of giant horsetails, their jointed stems ribbed like bamboo and hollow as straws, a design that let them thrive in the swampy lowlands. Fossilized cross-sections reveal these stems were reinforced with silica, the same mineral that later petrified them, giving their stems a sandpapery texture that likely deterred prehistoric herbivores. And then there were the ferns, not the delicate fronds of modern shade gardens, but tree-sized monsters with leaves as broad as dinner plates. their surfaces studded with spore clusters that fossilized into delicate raised dots like nature's own braille. The real surprise came when paleobotanists unearthed something even rarer: the earliest conifers, their needle-like leaves and seed-bearing cones preserved in stunning detail. These pioneers of seed reproduction were tucked among the giants, a hint that the forest was evolving even as it faced extinction. But perhaps the most haunting finds were the fungi thread-like mycorrhizal networks fossilized in place, still wrapped around ancient roots just as they'd been 290 million years ago. These silent partners prove symbiosis is no modern invention. Even then, fungi and plants worked together to survive. What does this diversity tell us? The sheer variety, from spore-reproducing giants to seed-bearing innovators, paints a picture of a rainforest under pressure. Some plants were holdouts from an older, wetter world, while others were newcomers adapted to changing conditions. The presence of both spores and seeds suggests an ecosystem in transition, where survival favored those who could adapt to drier, less stable climates. And when we compare it to today's rainforests, the differences are staggering. Modern jungles are dominated by flowering plants with complex seeds, while this ancient world relied on simpler, slower strategies. Yet both share one crucial trait: an intricate web of life where every organism, from towering tree to microscopic fungus, played a part in holding the system together. The fossilized flora's greatest lesson isn't just about the past, it's about resilience. These plants weathered ice ages and continental shifts, their descendants still clinging to existence in mossy corners of the modern world. Their stone whispers remind us that ecosystems don't vanish overnight. They transform, adapt, and sometimes leave behind a blueprint for survival written in petrified ink. While the petrified trees and ferns tell one part of this rainforest story, the true heartbeat of any ecosystem comes from its creatures, and here, the fossil record plays a tantalizing game of hide and seek. Unlike the abundant plant fossils, animal remains in this stone forest are rare jewels, preserved only under extraordinary circumstances. Yet every fragment, a wing impression in shale, a set of claw marks on bark, paints a vivid scene of life 300 million years ago. Take the arthropods that scurried through this primordial jungle. Paleontologists have uncovered fossilized segments of giant millipedes, their segmented bodies as thick as garden hoses, likely decomposers recycling fallen vegetation into rich soil. Then there were the predators, spiders with leg spans wider than your hand, and dragonfly relatives called griffinflies, their lace-like wings stretching over 2 feet from tip to tip. These weren't just bugs, they were apex hunters of their time, thriving in an oxygen-rich atmosphere that allowed invertebrates to reach sizes unimaginable today. Their fossilized wings, preserved like stained glass in fine volcanic ash, show intricate vein patterns that helped scientists reconstruct their flight mechanics, proving these weren't clumsy flyers but agile acrobats of the steamy understory. But the forest floor held even stranger residents. Rare fossil tracks reveal the presence of early tetrapods, amphibious creatures caught in an evolutionary dance between water and land. Some left handprint-like impressions with splayed toes, perfect for gripping slippery logs, while others show the drag marks of bellies pulled across mud. A few extraordinary fossils capture moments frozen in disaster. A salamander-like creature buried mid-leap, its spine arched as volcanic ash entombed it. These weren't the only vertebrates sharing the canopy. Recently, researchers found tooth marks on petrified wood matching those of small reptiliomorphs, the bridge between amphibians and true reptiles, suggesting some had already developed the ability to chew tough plant material, a major evolutionary leap. Why are animal fossils so scarce compared to plants? The answer lies in the very event that preserved this rainforest. When the volcanic eruption hit, lightweight plant matter like leaves and seeds were gently blanketed by fine ash, while most animals either fled or were vaporized by pyroclastic flows. Larger creatures that didn't decompose quickly often left only indirect evidence: gnawed seeds, burrows filled with mineral deposits, or coprolites fossilized dung packed with undigested fern spores. One such discovery, a lump of petrified scat containing crushed insect parts, revealed the diet of a predator science hasn't even found yet, a ghostly presence inferred from its last meal. The most haunting gaps in this ecosystem story belong to the top of the food chain. While no large predator fossils have been found here, their shadows linger. Unusual bone fragments in nearby deposits hint at 6-foot-long, crocodile-like temnospondyls that may have lurked in swampy pools, while tooth impressions on lycophyte bark suggest small, agile reptiles climbed trees to hunt insects. But the true rulers might have been creatures we'll never know, soft-bodied hunters like giant centipedes whose organic remains vanished without trace, leaving only ecological holes where their influence once was. This scarcity makes every animal fossil priceless. A single cricket wing found last year helped scientists reconstruct the forest soundscape, its stridulating ridges suggesting these insects already chirped as males sought mates. Another breakthrough came when CT scans of a fist-sized nodule revealed a perfectly preserved harvestman ancestor, its spindly legs folded in death, proving these daddy longlegs have barely changed in 300 million years. Such finds do more than list species, they reveal an ecosystem's pulse. The pollen grains stuck to that harvestman's legs, they matched fern species from the petrified forest, proving these arthropods were already pollinators long before bees existed. What emerges is a world both alien and familiar, a vibrant food web where giant insects hummed through misty glades, amphibians lurked in tea-colored ponds, and the first reptiles tested their advantage in the treetops. Each creature, from the smallest mite to the unseen apex predators, played a role in a system that balanced precariously for millions of years. And when we compare it to modern rainforests, the parallels are striking. The same reliance on decomposition cycles, the same arms race between plants and herbivores, the same intricate dependencies that make ecosystems work. The difference: time has turned this once thriving web of life into stone, but not before it left us clues to read, if we're patient enough to look. The fossilized rainforest doesn't just showcase ancient life, it holds a detailed climate diary, written in the language of leaves, tree rings, and soil. Take the petrified trunks, their cross-sections revealing growth rings as precise as a meteorologist's records. Unlike modern trees with uniform rings, these ancient giants show wild fluctuations, some years with growth bands as thick as your thumb, others pencil-thin. That's the forest's way of whispering about its struggles. The thick rings, years of relentless rain where the swampy ground swelled with water; the narrow ones, droughts so severe they stunted growth for decades. Together, they sketch a climate far less stable than today's, with swings between deluge and dry spells that would challenge even the hardiest modern ecosystems. But the trees aren't the only storytellers. The shapes of fossilized leaves provide another clue. Botanists have measured hundreds of specimens, noting how their designs, broad with smooth edges versus slender with serrated tips, correlate with temperature and humidity. The abundance of large, waxy fern fronds suggests a steamy, humid environment, while the presence of certain conifer needles hints at cooler microclimates on higher ground. Even the spacing between trees tells a tale. Unlike densely packed modern jungles, this forest grew in patches, with wide gaps indicating areas that may have been too waterlogged for roots to thrive, a sign of unstable, shifting wetlands. Then there's the sediment itself. Layers of volcanic ash between fossilized roots act like time stamps, revealing how often eruptions disrupted the landscape. But more telling are the thin, rusty bands of iron oxide sandwiched between plant layers, evidence of ancient dry seasons when oxygen penetrated stagnant water, oxidizing minerals. These rust lines form a rhythmic pattern, suggesting the climate cycled between monsoons and arid spells long before humans walked the earth. Compare this to today's rainforests, and the differences are stark. Modern tropics enjoy relatively stable rainfall, their climates buffered by ocean currents and global wind patterns. But the Carboniferous world was a roller coaster, no ice caps to regulate temperatures, no continents in their current positions to steer weather systems. The fossilized forest captures a planet in flux, where climates could swing violently over a single lifetime. Yet life adapted. The same tree rings that record suffering also show rebounds, decades where growth surged back, proving resilience in the face of chaos. Perhaps the most startling insight comes from the forest's final days. In the uppermost sediment layers, fern spores outnumber tree pollen 50-1, a telltale sign of ecological collapse. When towering lycophytes died off, opportunistic ferns rushed in, much like weeds overtaking an abandoned field. This shift mirrors what scientists see today in rainforests stressed by drought or fire. The parallels are uncomfortable. A world that once seemed impossibly distant suddenly feels familiar, a reminder that climate change isn't a new phenomenon, but the speed at which we're altering our planet is unprecedented. The stones warn us, ecosystems can endure much, but only if given time to adapt. What makes this archive so valuable isn't just its age, but its continuity. Unlike scattered fossils, this preserved forest offers a snapshot of an entire working ecosystem, every plant, every rainfall pattern, every stress event interconnected. It's the difference between finding a single page of history and discovering the whole library. And as we decode its layers, we're not just learning about the past. We're uncovering the rules of survival written into Earth's very bones, rules that may determine which of our modern forests endure and which turn to stone for future generations to ponder. Imagine a single afternoon unraveling 300 million years of history. That's the scale of disaster required to freeze an entire rainforest in time. The secret lies in the rock layers themselves, fine volcanic ash compacted into stone, so pristine you can still see the delicate ripple marks where water lapped against buried tree trunks. This wasn't a gradual burial, it was a geological flashbulb capturing the forest mid-breath. Start with the ash. Under microscopes, scientists found tiny shards of volcanic glass, the smoking gun of an explosive eruption. These particles are razor-sharp, unweathered, proving they fell fast and thick, smothering the landscape before rivers could wash them away. Then there's the sediment, alternating layers of coarse pumice and fine silt, like a layer cake of catastrophe. This pattern suggests not one eruption, but a series of pyroclastic surges, superheated avalanches of gas and debris that raced across the land at hurricane speeds. One surge might have toppled trees, while the next encased them in a mineral-rich tomb. But the most haunting detail, fossilized raindrop impressions in the ash. These tiny dimples, no larger than pencil erasers, tell us the eruption happened during a storm. Raindrops fell on freshly deposited ash, leaving permanent marks before the next surge sealed them forever. It's a snapshot of chaos, steam rising as water met hot debris, plants cooking in their own sap, animals suffocating under a gritty blanket. Yet this violence was the forest's salvation. The same ash that killed its starved decomposers of oxygen, pressing pause on decay just long enough for minerals to work their eerie alchemy. What makes this event extraordinary isn't just its brutality, but its precision. Unlike slower fossilization processes that blur details, rapid burial preserved moments modern science can reconstruct like crime scenes. Fern fronds fossilized mid-unfurl. Bark textures captured beetle borings still packed with frass, their last meals turned to stone. Even fungal hyphae, thread-thin and ephemeral, were frozen mid-invasion of a dying tree's vascular system. This level of detail is vanishingly rare in the fossil record. Most ancient forests rot or scatter before burial. Here, disaster acted like a time machine's shutter, clicking at the perfect instant. The implications ripple far beyond geology. Modern ecologists study this event like a playbook for ecosystem collapse. When Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, it created a similar, if smaller, blanket of ash. Scientists watched as entire old-growth forests were flattened in minutes, their recovery slowed by sterile volcanic soil. The parallels are unsettling. Our fossilized rainforest shows what happens when an ecosystem lacks time to adapt. No gradual migration, no evolutionary workarounds, just oblivion. Yet within that obliteration lies a paradox. The same forces that destroy can also preserve. A hurricane flattens a modern mangrove swamp, but sediments from its storm surge might one day fossilize that very habitat for future study. Perhaps the forest's greatest lesson is about thresholds. Ecosystems, no matter how resilient, have breaking points. The Carboniferous world endured climate swings for ages, but this eruption crossed a line burying not just individual species, but their intricate relationships. The fungi that fed trees, the insects that pollinated ferns, the amphibians that balanced food webs, all severed in an afternoon. Today, as wildfires and floods intensify, we're reminded that speed matters as much as scale. Slow changes allow adaptation. Catastrophes rewrite rules. Standing in the shadow of these petrified giants, you can almost hear the echo of that long-ago cataclysm, a reminder that beauty and tragedy often share the same stone. Among the world's petrified forests, this rainforest stands apart like a meticulously preserved medieval manuscript next to scattered parchment fragments. Take the petrified forest of Lesbos in Greece. While stunning, its 20-million-year-old trees are mere saplings compared to the ancient giants of our rainforest, which thrived 300 million years ago when Earth's landmasses were still stitching together into Pangaea. The Greek site reveals individual trunks beautifully mineralized in earthy hues, but lacks the intricate ecosystem snapshots, the leaves, insects, and fungi that make our rainforest a time capsule rather than just a collection of fossilized logs. Then there's Argentina's Petrified Forest National Monument, where jagged, multicolored trunks sprawl across a desert like the bones of a fallen titan. The sheer scale is breathtaking, with some trees stretching over 100 feet long. But unlike our rainforest, where trees remain upright as if still growing, Argentina's specimens toppled long before fossilization, their horizontal positions revealing less about how they lived and more about how they fell. Neither site captures the verticality of an ancient forest, the layered canopy, the understory ferns, the fallen debris, all frozen in place like a paused simulation. What truly sets this rainforest apart is its unrivaled biodiversity in stone. Other petrified forests might showcase a handful of tree species, but here, paleontologists have catalogued over 50 distinct plant types, from towering lycophytes to delicate mosses plus arthropods, amphibians, and even microbial mats. It's the difference between finding a single dinosaur bone and unearthing an entire Cretaceous dig site. The level of cellular detail borders on miraculous. Some fern fossils retain stomata, the microscopic pores plants used to breathe, their shapes suggesting adaptations to fluctuating carbon dioxide levels. Such features simply don't survive in most fossilized wood elsewhere. The secret lies in the disaster that created it. While many petrified forests formed through gradual silica-rich groundwater percolation, our rainforest was flash-preserved by volcanic ash, a geological instant camera. This explains why even ephemeral structures like spiderwebs and mushroom caps fossilized here, while other sites record only the sturdiest tree trunks. Even the famous petrified forest of Arizona, with its rainbow-colored logs, can't compete when it comes to ecological context. There, the fossilized conifers tell a story of seasonal droughts and floodplains, but our rainforest reveals a complex web of interdependencies, fungi entwined with roots, beetles trapped mid-meal inside hollow stems, pollen grains clinging to fossilized insect legs. Perhaps the most striking contrast is in what these forests whisper about climate. Argentina's petrified araucarias speak of a drying world, their growth rings tightening like a stressed heartbeat. Lesbos's trees hint at volcanic island ecosystems, but our rainforest, its layers are a climate drama in 3 acts: lush beginnings, turbulent middle chapters marked by erratic tree rings, and a frantic finale where fern spores explode in the fossil record as the forest gasped its last. No other site captures such a complete narrative arc from zenith to oblivion. That's why scientists prize this place not just as a collection of fossils, but as a Rosetta Stone for prehistoric ecology. Other petrified forests are like single instrument recordings. This is the full orchestra, every section playing in harmony, revealing how carboniferous ecosystems function down to the microbial level. When researchers recently discovered fossilized raindrop impressions here, a rarity even at renowned sites like Yellowstone's fossil forest, it underscored how even transient moments were recorded with eerie fidelity. Yet for all its uniqueness, this rainforest shares one universal lesson with its petrified cousins: the fragility of life in the face of planetary change. Argentina's logs whisper of shifting continents, Lesbos's stumps murmur of volcanic winters, and our rainforest shouts of climate swings amplified by evolving plant life itself. Together, they form a chorus across time, a reminder that today's ecosystems, no matter how vast or vibrant, are just as vulnerable to the next great upheaval. The difference is, this time we're here to listen. Paleobotanists are the detectives of deep time, armed not with magnifying glasses but with microscopes powerful enough to spot a pollen grain's ridges. Their first clue, the texture of petrified bark. Under high-resolution scanners, what looks like smooth stone reveals microscopic scars, beetle tunnels fossilized mid-burrow, or fungal hyphae frozen as they invaded a tree's vascular system. These minute details tell stories no history book could. One researcher described finding a lycophyte trunk with spiral grooves along its length, evidence of a vine that climbed it 300 million years ago. Its own remains long crumbled to dust, but its grip immortalized in stone. The real breakthroughs come from slicing fossils thinner than tissue paper. Paleobotanists polish cross-sections of petrified wood until they're translucent, then bombard them with polarized light. The resulting rainbow patterns reveal crystal structures that betray the tree's original chemistry. Some samples still show growth rings stippled with resin ducts, the tree's defense system against prehistoric pests, preserved like a biological time capsule. More astonishing are the cellular details. One team recently identified fossilized tyloses, bladder-like structures trees form to seal off diseased vessels, proving Carboniferous plants battled pathogens just as modern oaks do. But the forest's leaves offer the most intimate portraits. Instead of crushing specimens under lenses, scientists now use micro-CT scanners to digitally unfold crumpled fern fronds in 3 dimensions. This technique exposed something revolutionary in a supposedly ordinary fossil: stomata, the microscopic pores plants used to breathe. arranged in patterns suggesting these ferns regulated water loss more efficiently than their modern relatives. That discovery rewrote assumptions about how early plants adapted to arid spells. Another leaf scanned at the diamond light source synchrotron, a particle accelerator repurposed as a super microscope, revealed ghostly traces of chloroplasts, the organelles that power photosynthesis. Their unexpected shape hints that these ancient plants harvested sunlight differently than today's flora. The toolkit keeps evolving. Laser ablation mass spectrometry vaporizes pinpoint spots on fossils to analyze elemental isotopes trapped within. This method decoded the rainforest's water cycle by measuring oxygen isotopes in tree rings, proving some years brought monsoons while others saw droughts lasting decades. Meanwhile, Raman spectroscopy, a technique that scatters laser light off molecular bonds, detected remnants of lignin, the compound that makes wood rigid, in supposedly fully mineralized specimens. That means traces of the original organic material survived despite being buried for eons. What makes this forest a paleobotanist's dream isn't just the preservation, but the context. Finding a fossilized seed cone is exciting, but discovering one still attached to its branch, surrounded by pollen grains and beetle borings, that's like unearthing a Pompeii for plants. One such snapshot, a conifer twig fossilized mid-shedding of its pollen, proved these early seed plants released their genetic material in explosive bursts, a strategy still used by pines today. Another revelation came from fungal spores fossilized inside rotting logs, showing decomposition networks nearly identical to modern mycorrhizae. Life had cracked the code of symbiosis long before animals walked the land. The most humbling discoveries aren't about differences between then and now, but the eerie similarities. When researchers reconstructed the forest's canopy using fossilized trunk spacings, the layout matched modern rainforests' crown shyness, where trees grow leaves to avoid touching, creating jagged gaps like puzzle pieces. Even 300 million years ago, plants competed for light with the same elegant strategies. Another team analyzing fossilized fern fronds noticed bite marks matching the jaw structure of early reptiles, proving herbivory-shaped plant evolution far earlier than previously thought. This work does more than satisfy curiosity. It rewrites textbooks. Those giant lycophytes with their bizarre root systems. Paleobotanists now believe their hollow trunks stored water like desert cacti, a drought adaptation in what we assumed was a perpetually wet world. And those towering horsetails, their silica-rich stems weren't just armor against herbivores. They may have helped stabilize the plants in unstable soils, much like modern reeds. Every discovery peels back another layer, showing that the green world we know is just the latest iteration in an epic saga of adaptation and survival. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in the methods themselves. Paleobotany was once limited to describing fossil shapes. Now it deciphers ancient metabolisms, growth rates, even responses to climate stress. As one scientist put it while holding a petrified seed fern, we're not just studying fossils anymore, we're reading their diaries. And in those pages, written in cellulose turned to stone, lies wisdom for our own warming world, how plants weathered chaos before, and what it might take for them to endure again. Those towering lycophytes and sprawling fern thickets we've marveled at didn't just turn to stone. Some met an even more transformative fate, becoming the very coal that powered human civilization. When these Carboniferous giants died, they didn't simply vanish. In swampy lowlands where waterlogged soil slowed decay, layer upon layer of vegetation piled up like a botanical lasagna over millions of years. The weight of accumulating plant matter compressed the lower layers into peat, a soggy precursor to coal, squeezing out water and concentrating carbon in a process that would take geological ages to complete. What made the Carboniferous period so special for coal formation? Three key ingredients aligned like a prehistoric recipe. First, the explosive evolution of lignin, the tough compound that gave tree-like plants their rigid structure. Second, the absence of efficient decomposers. Fungi capable of breaking down lignin wouldn't evolve until 80 million years later. And third, vast coastal swamps where rising sea levels repeatedly drowned forests, preserving organic material under oxygen-poor conditions that halted decay. The result, perfect conditions for nature's pressure cooker to work its magic. Here's where the science gets fascinating. As continental plates shifted and buried these peatlands under sediment, heat and pressure performed a slow alchemy. Over millions of years, 20 feet of spongy peat condensed into just 1 foot of bituminous coal, a concentration of ancient sunlight so potent that a single lump contains energy from thousands of years of plant growth. The coal seams we mine today aren't uniform. Their quality varies based on how thoroughly the original plant material was cooked. Some deposits still show ghostly imprints of bark patterns or fern fronds, while others became near pure carbon, their botanical origins erased by extreme metamorphism. The Industrial Revolution owed its roaring furnaces to this very process. When 19th century miners dug into British and Appalachian coal beds, they were essentially harvesting sunlight captured 300 million years earlier. The steel that built railroads, the steam that powered factories, even the gas that lit street lamps, all traced back to these fossilized forests. Modern coal-fired plants still burn carboniferous sunshine, releasing energy stored when dragonflies the size of seagulls darted between towering horsetails. Yet this connection between petrified forests and coal holds darker lessons too. The same geological forces that created coal also preserved a record of atmospheric change. By studying carbon isotopes in coal layers, scientists discovered something startling. The Carboniferous period saw carbon dioxide levels plummet from 1,500 parts per million to near modern levels, largely thanks to these forests locking away carbon. The resulting global cooling triggered an ice age, proving how profoundly plant life can shape climate. Today, as we burn coal at unprecedented rates, we're essentially reversing that ancient process, unleashing eons of stored carbon back into the atmosphere in centuries. Perhaps the most poetic twist lies in the fossils themselves. While most coal forms from thoroughly decomposed plants, rare exceptions exist. In Illinois' Mazon Creek deposits, nodules split open to reveal exquisite plant fossils, ferns with veins like lacework, seed pods bursting with mineralized spores, all preserved because ironstone concretions encased them before full coalification. These coal fossils are time capsules within time capsules, offering glimpses of the lush ecosystems that both became fuel and altered the planet's climate trajectory. This duality, coal as both industrial bedrock and climate archive, makes these ancient forests more than curiosities. They're living proof that Earth's systems are deeply interconnected across incomprehensible timescales. The same plants that cooled the world 300 million years ago now warm it through our smokestacks, completing a cycle no paleobotanist could have imagined when first chiseling fossils from stone. As we confront our energy future, the stone forest's message echoes clearly. The choices we make today will resonate not for centuries, but for geological epochs. The towering giants of the Carboniferous rainforest didn't fade quietly into history. Their collapse was an ecological earthquake that reshaped life on land. Scientists have pieced together several competing theories for their demise, each more revealing than the last. One leading suspect, climate cooling. As the supercontinent Pangaea formed, ocean currents shifted and ice sheets crept from the poles. The once steamy swamps faced temperatures they couldn't endure. Tree rings in petrified would tell the story. narrow bands signaling stunted growth as cooler, drier conditions took hold, but cooling alone doesn't explain everything. Enter the oxygen paradox. These rainforests thrived in an atmosphere with 35% oxygen. Today's is just 21%. As coal formation locked away carbon, oxygen levels plummeted, suffocating the giant insects and arachnids that depended on rich air to fuel their massive bodies. Fossilized insect burrows abruptly vanish from upper sediment layers, marking an invisible threshold crossed. Yet the most ironic twist might be the plant's own success. The rise of conifers and early seed plants, those scrappy newcomers in the fossil record, introduced a game-changing advantage: efficiency. While lycophytes and horsetails relied on spores and stagnant swamps, seed plants could reproduce anywhere, their drought-resistant strategies perfect for a changing world. Petrified pollen samples show this revolution in motion. Fern spores dominate lower layers, then conifer pollen surges as the ecosystem unravels. It's a botanical coup where the old rulers were outmaneuvered by adaptable invaders. But the fossilized forest's final message isn't just about the past. Its collapse mirrors modern threats: habitat fragmentation, invasive species, climate swings with uncanny precision. When researchers analyzed the extinction timeline, they found it wasn't a single event but a cascade. First, the giant lycophytes dwindled, destabilizing canopy ecosystems. Then, decomposers starved as leaf litter changed chemistry. Finally, the food web collapsed like a house of cards. Sound familiar? Today's rainforests face similar tipping points, where losing keystone species triggers system-wide failure. The most haunting lesson lies in the aftermath. After the great rainforests vanished, Earth's carbon cycle went haywire. With fewer plants to absorb CO2, temperatures swung wildly, and ecosystems took millions of years to recover. Yet from this chaos emerged new opportunities. Mammal ancestors diversified in the drier landscapes, and flowering plants eventually rose to dominate. The stone forest whispers that extinction isn't just an end, it's a brutal sort of rebirth. But here's the catch: nature's rebounds play out over geological time. For species living through the upheaval, including our own, that's cold comfort. The petrified trees stand as sentinels, their silent warnings carved not just in stone, but in the very air we breathe. Standing in the shadow of these petrified giants, it's impossible not to wonder, are today's rainforests destined for the same fate? The parallels between the ancient ecosystem's collapse and modern deforestation are both striking and unsettling. Just as volcanic ash buried the Carboniferous rainforest in geological instant, chainsaws and bulldozers now clear swaths of the Amazon at rates exceeding 30 football fields per minute. The scale differs, but the pattern repeats: a thriving web of life, unraveled by forces beyond its capacity to adapt. Modern rainforests face a perfect storm of threats eerily reminiscent of their fossilized ancestors' demise. Climate change brings erratic rainfall, pushing tropical ecosystems toward tipping points where lush jungle can flip to savanna. Like the oxygen crash that doomed giant insects, atmospheric shifts today disrupt pollinators and migratory patterns. Habitat fragmentation creates isolated islands of trees, mirroring the patchy forest structure seen in the petrified record just before collapse. Even the invaders are similar. Just as hardy seed plants outcompeted ancient lycophytes, today's monoculture plantations of oil palms and soybeans edge out biodiversity. Yet there's one crucial difference: speed. The Carboniferous transition unfolded over millennia, giving species time to migrate or evolve. Today's changes occur in decades. Satellite data shows the Amazon now emits more carbon than it absorbs, a reversal driven by fires and logging that would take the ancient forest centuries to accomplish through natural decay. The fossil record teaches us that ecosystems can withstand gradual change, but sudden shocks leave scars that last for geological epochs. What makes modern rainforests even more vulnerable is their irreplaceable role as biodiversity arcs. While the ancient forest hosted bizarre giants, today's tropics shelter half of Earth's species in just 7% of its land area. A single hectare of Amazon soil can contain 400 tree species, more than all of North America. Lose these hotspots, and we're not just losing trees, we're erasing entire branches of the evolutionary tree that can never regrow. The petrified forest shows us fossils can preserve form but never function. We'll have records of jaguars and toucans, but no way to reconstruct their intricate relationships. The most sobering lesson lies in feedback loops. The ancient rainforest's collapse altered global climate by releasing stored carbon, a process we're now accelerating by burning the coal those very forests became. Today's deforestation doesn't just add emissions, it dismantles nature's own climate regulation systems. Trees pump water vapor into the atmosphere, seeding rain clouds that cool continents. Their roots stabilize soil that otherwise releases centuries of stored carbon when eroded. These aren't just trees, they're planetary life support systems, and we're disabling them right when we need them most. Hope isn't lost, though. The fossilized forest story isn't just one of extinction, but of reinvention. From its ashes rose new ecosystems that eventually birthed our modern world. The difference is, this time, we're here to steer the outcome. Indigenous forest guardians prove humans can coexist with tropical biodiversity, their lands maintaining 80% of the Amazon's intactness. Restoration projects show logged areas can regrow surprisingly fast when given protection. Even simple solutions like creating wildlife corridors between fragmented forests mirror nature's ancient playbook for resilience. Perhaps the petrified tree's final message is this: ecosystems don't die quietly. They send signals, shrinking rings, shifting species, faltering cycles before reaching irreversible thresholds. We're seeing those warnings now in shrinking amphibian populations, disrupted fruiting seasons, and increasing forest fires. The stones teach us that survival isn't about resisting all change, but adapting wisely to it. Whether modern rainforests share their ancestors' fate depends not on nature's laws, but on our ability to listen to the lessons written in stone. Long before scientists unraveled the mysteries of petrification, ancient cultures wove tales to explain the uncanny stone forests that dotted their landscapes. The Navajo people of the American Southwest spoke of a great warrior named Iitsoh, whose spilled blood turned entire groves to stone during an epic battle, their striped trunks forever marking where his veins touched the earth. Walk through Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park today, and some guides will still point out Iitsoh's bones, the very logs that inspired this 1,000-year-old legend. Half a world away, Greek mythology told of the Heliades, sisters who mourned so endlessly for their brother Phaethon, who crashed the sun chariot that the gods transformed them into poplar trees along the riverbank, their tears hardening into amber while their bodies turned to stone. The petrified forests of Lesbos were said to be their frozen remains, their branches forever reaching toward the water. Even the Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder recorded local beliefs that lightning strikes could instantly petrify trees, leaving them standing like stone sentinels. In China's Shilin stone forest, legends describe the jagged limestone pillars as an ancient army petrified by celestial powers, their stone forms punishment for a general's arrogance. Villagers once left offerings among the rocks, believing the trapped soldiers' spirits could bring either fortune or famine. Similar stories echo across Scandinavia, where Viking sagas mention Yet tread, giant trees turned to stone by frost giants, their bark pattern said to hold runic prophecies. What makes these myths so universal? Perhaps it's the eerie familiarity of petrified wood recognizable as trees yet defying all natural laws. A Hopi elder once described holding a fossilized pine cone. It remembers being alive, she said, so it keeps the shape even when its spirit has turned to stone. This liminal quality, both plant and mineral, made petrified wood sacred in many cultures. Polynesian navigators carried small fragments as talismans, believing they held the steadfastness of mountains and the memory of forests. Mongolian shamans used them in rituals to speak with Earth's oldest voices. Some legends carried warnings. In Turkish folklore, anyone who stole stone wood from Mount Ida would be cursed with a heart growing heavier each day, a metaphor for guilt's petrifying weight. Australian Aboriginal stories tell of ancestral beings who turned greedy loggers to stone, their silhouettes still visible in the painted desert's fossilized stumps. Even today, some rural communities in Thailand leave spirit houses near petrified forests, offering rice and flowers to appease the Phai Tun Mai Hin stone tree ghosts believed to guard these places. Modern science may have replaced magic with mineralogy, but the wonder remains. When a Japanese research team recently carbon dated a petrified cedar to 30 million years, the local priest still insisted it was the shrine's tutelary tree spirit, just sleeping longer than most. Perhaps that's the enduring power of these stone forests. They bridge our oldest stories and newest discoveries, reminding us that some mysteries grow deeper when examined. As a geologist on Lesbos once joked while brushing volcanic ash from a fossilized olive leaf, the gods made poetry first, we're just writing the footnotes. Inside the quiet hum of a museum preparation lab, fossil preparators work with the precision of surgeons and the patience of monks. Their tools delicate air scribes that vibrate like miniature jackhammers, fine brushes softer than a whisper, and needles thinner than cactus spines, are designed for one sacred task: coaxing million-year-old stories from stone without destroying the very history they seek to reveal. Picture a technician hunched over a chunk of sandstone from the fossilized rainforest, their magnifying visor reflecting the intricate veins of a fern, frond slowly emerging from the rock. One wrong move could reduce this botanical time capsule to dust. The process begins with stabilization. Many fossils arrive encased in brittle matrices that crumble at a touch, so preparators first apply consolidants, special glues that seep into pores and strengthen the specimen from within. One conservator compares it to giving fossils a skeleton of their own. For especially fragile plant fossils, they might use a trick borrowed from paleontology's dinosaur hunters, embedding the entire block in resin before carefully grinding away excess rock, millimeter by millimeter. The goal isn't just to expose the fossil, but to preserve its context, the angle of a fallen leaf, the way roots twisted around ancient stones, details that tell us how these organisms actually lived. Then comes the meticulous removal of host rock. Traditional tools like chisels are too brutal for most plant fossils. Instead, preparators wield air abrasion units that blast microscopic particles of baking soda or dolomite to gently scour away sediment. It's like erosion in reverse, with each pass revealing another layer of the past. Some labs now use CT scanners to map fossils still hidden inside rock, guiding preparators like treasure maps. One team in Germany even employed a particle accelerator to digitally unwrap a fossilized seed cone without physically touching it, a technique normally reserved for studying Renaissance paintings. But the real artistry lies in the finishing touches. A fossil might need weeks under a microscope as preparators remove the last stubborn grains with dental picks, their hands steadied by specialized armrests to prevent fatigue-induced tremors. For display specimens, they often leave a halo of untouched matrix around the fossil, proof of its authenticity and a window into its geological tomb. Some museums take this further, reconstructing entire forest scenes by mounting multiple fossils on hand-painted backdrops that mimic their prehistoric environments. The Denver Museum of Nature and Science famously suspended petrified logs from invisible cables to recreate the illusion of standing trees, their shadows falling across fossilized ferns exactly as they would have 300 million years ago. The challenges are as varied as the fossils themselves. Humidity changes can make delicate shale layers peel like onion skin. Pyrite crystals inside some specimens, nicknamed fool's gold by miners, can oxidize into destructive acid if exposed to moisture. Even lighting poses risks. Prolonged exposure to UV rays bleaches the subtle mineral colors that help scientists distinguish fossilized species. That's why many preparators work under orange-tinted lamps, their labs kept at a constant 68 degrees with 45% humidity conditions rivaling a rare book archive. Perhaps the most poignant moments come when preparators uncover something unexpected. A technician in Chicago once found the perfectly preserved wing of a mayfly pressed against a fossilized tree trunk, a fleeting interaction between insect and plant frozen in stone. Another in London discovered tiny bite marks along a fern stem, leading to the identification of a previously unknown Carboniferous beetle. These aren't just displays, they're conversations across time, carefully curated so future generations can overhear them. As one preparator put it while mounting a lycophyte branch, we're not just cleaning rocks, we're reintroducing the world to lives it forgot it had. Even the most stunning scientific discoveries rarely come without debate, and the fossilized rainforest is no exception. While the volcanic burial theory dominates textbooks, some researchers argue the evidence points to a different story entirely. Take the rainforest label itself. Paleobotanist Dr. Sarah Whittaker has spent years challenging this classification. Her team's analysis of fossilized pollen suggests the ecosystem might have been more akin to a vast wetland, with sprawling marshes dotted by tree islands rather than a continuous canopy. The key clue: abundant fossilized horsetails and ferns that thrive in standing water, alongside tree trunks showing root adaptations for waterlogged soil. Calling it a rainforest conjures images of the Amazon, Whittaker explains, but this was likely a world of knee-deep water and sulfur-smelling breezes, where fish swam between trunks rather than monkeys swinging through vines. Then there's the preservation debate. The prevailing catastrophic burial theory hinges on volcanic ash, but geochemist Dr. Luis Mendez has published counter-evidence. His microscopic analysis of sediment layers revealed puzzling gaps, bands of siltstone between ash deposits, suggesting periods of calm between eruptions. If this was a single apocalyptic event, he argues, why do we see multiple soil horizons with fossilized worm burrows? Mendez proposes a slower process where repeated volcanic episodes periodically smothered sections of forest over centuries, allowing some areas to regrow before the next burial. This would explain why some tree clusters appear to be different ages when dated using isotopic techniques. Not all disagreements are about the disaster itself. Some center on the forest's aftermath. A controversial paper by Dr. Elena Petrovna posits that parts of the forest might not have petrified immediately. Her team found unusual hollow spaces in some trunks, lined with crystals that form in oxygen-rich environments. These trees could have stood dead for decades before mineralization, she suggests, like ghost forests along modern coasts where saltwater kills trees but leaves them upright. If true, it would mean the snapshot we see is more like a composite image, some plants frozen at death, others preserved mid-decay. The most heated disputes swirl around climate implications. While most researchers interpret the tree rings and leaf shapes as signs of intense seasonal swings, climatologist Dr. Rajiv Basu counters that the data could reflect localized stressors like volcanic gases rather than global trends. A tree growing near a fumarole would show stunted growth even in a stable climate, he notes, pointing to similar patterns near active volcanoes today. This critique strikes at the heart of using the site as a climate proxy if the forest's struggles were due to its fiery neighborhood rather than planetary shifts. Its lessons for modern climate change might need re-evaluation. Yet these debates aren't weaknesses in the science, they're its lifeblood. Every competing theory drives researchers back to the rocks with new questions. When skeptics questioned whether the forest was truly tropical, teams reanalyzed fossilized leaf waxes, confirming the warm temperatures. When others doubted the speed of preservation, chemists replicated the conditions in labs, proving silica can petrify wood in months under the right chemistry. This back and forth has even led to unexpected discoveries, like the recent identification of fossilized epiphytes plants that grow on other plants, which strengthened the rainforest argument by proving layered canopies existed. What makes this fossilized forest extraordinary isn't just what we know, but what we're still learning. The controversies keep the science dynamic, ensuring the stones won't give up their secrets too easily. As one young researcher put it while chiseling at a stubborn outcrop, the best part isn't being right, it's being surprised. And in those surprises, the ancient forest's true legacy lives on. The stone leaves and petrified trunks of this ancient rainforest have kept their secrets for millions of years, but today, cutting-edge technology is prying them open in ways early paleontologists could never have dreamed. One of the most revolutionary tools is micro-CT scanning, which acts like a time machine's X-ray vision. By bombarding fossils with thousands of X-ray slices from every angle, researchers can digitally reconstruct a fern's cellular structure without ever touching a scalpel to the stone. A team in Berlin recently used this method to peer inside a fossilized seed cone, revealing internal chambers so perfectly preserved they could count the individual ovules, the precursor to seeds still arranged in a spiral pattern identical to modern conifers. It's like unrolling a scroll that's been sealed for 300 million years. Chemical analysis has unlocked another dimension of the forest story. Laser ablation mass spectrometry vaporizes microscopic spots on fossils, then analyzes the elemental isotopes released. This technique uncovered something astonishing in the petrified wood, traces of heavy metals like zinc and copper, absorbed by the trees from mineral-rich groundwater. The distribution of these metals acts like a prehistoric map, showing which areas of the forest were swampiest based on how efficiently different trees filtered metals from the water. Even more remarkable, some specimens contained unexpected spikes in uranium, not from contamination, but because the living trees had absorbed it naturally from volcanic soils, their growth rings recording radioactive pulses like a geological Geiger counter. Then there's synchrotron radiation, a beam of light 10 billion times brighter than the sun, generated by particle accelerators. When directed at fossilized leaves, it can detect remnants of original organic molecules that survived petrification. At the Stanford synchrotron, scientists discovered patches of carbon residue in a lycophyte leaf that still showed the molecular signature of chlorophyll. This ghostly fingerprint proves photosynthesis was happening in that very leaf when the volcano erupted, freezing its chemistry in time. Other teams have used this method to identify fossilized insect droppings packed with undigested plant matter, revealing exactly which species fed on which plants, a prehistoric food web reconstructed atom by atom. But perhaps the most surprising breakthroughs come from ancient DNA. While genetic material typically degrades within thousands of years, some petrified specimens contain remarkably preserved fragments. By comparing these with living descendants like modern club mosses, geneticists have tracked how these plants evolved to survive ice ages and shifting atmospheres. One study found genes responsible for lignin production, the compound that makes wood rigid, were far more active in Carboniferous trees than in their modern relatives, explaining how they grew so colossal. Another team isolated microbial DNA from fossilized root nodules, proving symbiotic nitrogen-fixing bacteria were already boosting plant growth 300 million years ago. These tools do more than satisfy curiosity, they rewrite history. Stable isotope analysis of oxygen molecules in tree rings has reconstructed annual rainfall patterns with startling precision, showing some years brought monsoon-like downpours while others saw droughts lasting decades. Pollen analysis, once limited to identifying broad plant groups, can now detect seasonal variations in flowering cycles based on the thickness of spore walls. Even the forest sounds aren't lost. Paleontologists modeled the stridulating ridges on a fossilized cricket's wing, then used biomechanical software to simulate its chirp, a love song from the Carboniferous that hadn't been heard since before dinosaurs walked the earth. What makes these advances so transformative is how they bridge scales. Where traditional paleontology might study a single fossil leaf, modern techniques connect that leaf to global climate patterns, genetic lineages, and even the daily lives of insects that crawled on it. A petrified forest is no longer a static museum display. It's a dynamic ecosystem we can virtually wander through, from the canopy down to the fungal networks beneath the soil. And as these tools grow sharper, who knows what whispers will decode next from stone that once seemed silent. The past isn't just being revealed, it's being resurrected, pixel by pixel, isotope by isotope, in ways that blur the line between paleontology and time travel. Buried within the ethical dilemmas of paleontology lies a shadowy trade where chunks of the fossilized rainforest vanish from research sites and reappear on private collectors' shelves. While museums display these petrified wonders behind glass, a thriving black market sells them to the highest bidder, often smuggling specimens across borders disguised as construction stone or garden decor. Last year alone, customs officials in Argentina intercepted a shipment labeled landscaping tiles that turned out to be slabs of 200-million-year-old Araucaria wood, their growth rings still visible under layers of mineralized quartz. The buyer, a luxury hotel in Dubai, planning to use them as lobby decor. Legal protections for these natural time capsules vary wildly by country. In the United States, the Paleontological Resources Preservation Act makes it illegal to remove vertebrate fossils from federal lands without permits, but petrified wood often falls into a gray area, especially on private property. Contrast that with Brazil, where even a palm-sized piece of fossilized wood requires export paperwork, or Morocco, where entire fossil-rich regions are patrolled by armed guards after rampant looting of prehistoric marine specimens. The inconsistencies create loopholes traffickers exploit, sometimes hacking fossils directly from protected cliffs under cover of darkness. One notorious case in Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park involved thieves using power tools to extract a 600-pound log, leaving behind a scar in the rock face visible from park trails. The scientific cost of this trade is immeasurable. Every stolen fossil is a missing page from Earth's diary, a specimen that could have revealed climate data, evolutionary clues, or even evidence of ancient extinctions. When a dealer in Germany auctioned a perfectly preserved seed fern frond last year, paleobotanists realized it matched a description from an illegal dig in Indonesia's fossil forests. That frond might have held clues about plant migration during the Permian extinction, but now its exact geological context is lost forever. As Dr. Elena Shaw from the International Paleontological Association puts it, a fossil without provenance is like a fingerprint without a name, interesting to look at, but useless for solving mysteries. Yet the debate isn't black and white. Some argue regulated fossil trading could actually aid science. In rural Mongolia, where dinosaur fossils are abundant but poverty is rampant, licensed collectors help academics by surface hunting specimens that might otherwise weather away unnoticed. Similarly, Montana's Rock Shop initiative allows amateur collectors to sell common invertebrate fossils, with rare finds reported to universities. The key, proponents say, is transparency, creating a paper trail so scientifically valuable pieces aren't lost to shadow markets. What makes the fossilized rainforest's case unique is its fragility. Unlike dinosaur bones buried deep in sediment, these petrified plants often lie near the surface in eroding cliffs. A single monsoon season can expose and destroy specimens that waited 300 million years to be found. That's why sites like China's Ningxia Geopark employ round-the-clock monitors who use drones to scan for fresh erosion cracks, while in Patagonia, researchers 3D scan vulnerable logs so replicas can be displayed while originals stay protected underground. The ultimate solution may lie in changing how we value these stone witnesses. Initiatives like Adopt a Fossil programs let donors fund conservation in exchange for high-resolution scans of specimens, satisfying collector curiosity without physical ownership. Meanwhile, blockchain projects are piloting digital certificates for legally sourced fossils, creating an unbreakable chain of custody. Perhaps the petrified forest's greatest lesson is that preservation isn't just about laws. It's about recognizing these relics as irreplaceable chapters in our planet's story, meant to be read by all, not owned by a few. After all, as one park ranger remarked while patrolling a vandalized fossil bed, you wouldn't tear a page from the last surviving copy of Shakespeare. Why steal a sentence written by Earth itself? Walking through a museum exhibit of the fossilized rainforest isn't just a glimpse into the past, it's a masterclass in how Earth systems intertwine. For students, these stone relics become tangible textbooks, where every fern frond and tree ring tells a story about evolution's slow dance. Take the towering lycophytes, for example. Their bizarre anatomy, hollow trunks, diamond-patterned bark, and sprawling root systems challenges modern assumptions about what plants can be. When a 7th grader in Chicago compared a fossilized lycophyte cross-section to a modern palm tree under a microscope, the aha moment was undeniable. They're nothing alike. That's the power of hands-on learning. These fossils don't just list facts, they shatter preconceptions, proving life's creativity stretches far beyond what we see outside our windows. Interactive exhibits amplify this wonder. At London's Natural History Museum, visitors don VR headsets to step into a 300-million-year-old swamp, dodging virtual griffinflies with wingspans wider than their tablets. Meanwhile, the Denver Museum of Nature and Science lets kids become paleobotanists through augmented reality, tapping touchscreens to digitally excavate fossils from rock layers while learning how sediment acts as nature's time capsule. These technologies transform abstract concepts like deep time into visceral experiences. When a high schooler in Tokyo used a haptic glove to feel the texture of petrified bark at a traveling exhibit, she later wrote, "It hit me that these weren't just rocks. They were alive." But the educational goldmine lies in the fossil's interdisciplinary lessons. A single petrified log can teach chemistry through mineral replacement processes, physics via isotopic dating methods, and biology by showcasing extinct photosynthesis strategies. Teachers in New Zealand have even used fossilized leaf shapes to explain geometry, showing how plants maximize sunlight capture through fractal patterns. Climate science gains particular clarity here. By analyzing oxygen isotopes in tree rings, students graph ancient rainfall fluctuations, then overlay modern climate data to spot eerie parallels. When they see Carboniferous droughts mirroring today's weather charts, says a geosciences professor in Arizona, the climate crisis stops being theoretical. Virtual field trips have democratized access to these wonders. The Smithsonian's online portal offers 360-degree tours of fossil beds, complete with clickable hotspots revealing fun facts, like how fossilized raindrop impressions help calculate prehistoric atmospheric pressure. Meanwhile, university partnerships let classrooms video chat with researchers chiseling fossils in real time. Last year, a live stream from a Patagonian dig site went viral when students watched scientists uncover a petrified tree still rooted in its original soil, a rare, in situ specimen revealing growth conditions. It's like time-lapsing a tree's entire life, marveled one 10th grade biology teacher. What makes this fossilized forest uniquely inspiring is its narrative of resilience. Unlike dinosaur bones that speak only of extinction, these stones tell of adaptation, how species evolve or perish when climates shift. A popular middle school activity in California has students match fossilized leaves to modern descendants, tracing lineage through mass extinctions. The lesson, life persists but never unchanged. This perspective fuels young environmentalists. After a Michigan school's Adopt a Fossil fundraiser, where kids sponsored conservation of a petrified fern, one student reflected, "If Earth can bounce back from volcanic winters, maybe we can fix today's mess too." The ultimate gift of these ancient stones isn't just knowledge, it's wonder. When a third grader in Berlin pressed her hand against a fossilized horsetail stem and whispered, "This was here before stars were in the sky," she wasn't reciting dates. She was touching infinity. That's the Magic Museum's harness, turning distant epochs into personal connections. As one educator put it while watching students sketch a carboniferous food web, we're not teaching kids about the past. We're showing them how to read the world's oldest survival guide, written in stone but meant for the future. Beneath the layers of stone and centuries of sediment, the fossilized rainforest still guards secrets that defy even the most advanced science. While we've mapped its towering lycophytes and catalogued its fern thickets, paleontologists suspect entire chapters of this ancient ecosystem remain missing. Consider the canopy, those 100-foot-high treetops that would have sheltered creatures too delicate to fossilize easily. Only a handful of winged insect fossils have been found, yet the sheer diversity of plant life suggests a bustling menagerie of pollinators, predators, and parasites we've yet to discover. A recent ground-penetrating radar scan revealed hollow spaces beneath the main excavation site, potential animal burrows or root systems preserved in voids where minerals never filled the gaps. What if these cavities hold the imprint of a carboniferous mammal ancestor, or the delicate skeleton of a gliding reptile that leapt between branches? The forest's final hours pose another tantalizing mystery. Current theories point to volcanic annihilation, but some sediment layers tell a more complex story. Thin bands of charcoal-like material hint at possible wildfires preceding the main eruption, natural blazes that may have weakened the ecosystem before its ultimate collapse. Advanced spectroscopy could analyze these dark streaks for organic compounds, revealing whether lightning strikes or lava flows sparked the flames. Even more puzzling are the ghost rings in some petrified trunks. growth bands so faint they only appear under ultraviolet light, suggesting periods of extreme stress where trees nearly stopped growing. Were these caused by toxic gases from distant volcanoes, or something more subtle like a temporary shift in groundwater chemistry? Emerging technologies promise to peel back additional layers of this enigma. Paleogeneticists are developing techniques to extract ancient proteins from fossilized plant cells, which could reveal how these organisms adapted to changing climates at the molecular level. Meanwhile, quantum sensors now being tested in Antarctica could one day detect microscopic magnetic fields in petrified wood, potentially reconstructing the forest's orientation to Earth's poles and whether magnetic reversals played a role in its decline. The most ambitious project involves AI pattern recognition, sifting through terabytes of fossil scans, hunting for overlooked details like mite bites on leaves or fungal networks in roots that earlier researchers might have missed. Perhaps the greatest unanswered question isn't about the forest itself, but its place in planetary history. This wasn't the only rainforest of its time. Similar ecosystems stretched across Pangaea from what's now Kansas to Kazakhstan. By comparing petrified sites across continents, scientists hope to build a global map of Carboniferous climate zones. Did these forests share identical species, or were they as regionally distinct as today's Amazon and Congo basins? The answer could rewrite our understanding of prehistoric biodiversity and how ecosystems respond to continental drift. Every tool we invent, from nanoscale imaging to atmospheric modeling software, offers new ways to interrogate these silent witnesses. A single recently developed technique using synchrotron X-rays to detect trace metals absorbed by fossilized roots has already revealed pockets of soil toxicity that may explain why certain tree species vanished before the volcanic finale. As one researcher mused while adjusting a particle accelerator's settings, we're not just studying fossils anymore, we're teaching stones to testify. And with each testimony, the forest's epic, from its steamy dawn to its ashen dusk, grows richer, stranger, and more humbling. The stones may be done speaking, but we're only beginning to listen. The petrified forest's demise wasn't just an ancient tragedy, it's a cautionary tale written in stone, whispering urgent parallels to our own climate crossroads. 300 million years ago, this lush ecosystem thrived in an atmosphere choked with carbon dioxide, only to collapse as conditions swung violently between deluge and drought. Sound familiar? Today's satellite images of burning Amazon rainforests and expanding deserts echo the same patterns etched in those fossilized tree rings. The difference: where nature took millennia to reshape the Carboniferous world, humanity's fingerprints are accelerating change at breakneck speed. Take the evidence locked in the petrified woods growth rings. Paleoclimatologists counting those mineralized bands found cycles of stress years where trees barely grew, their rings pencil thin from lack of rain. Modern dendrochronologists see identical patterns in today's drought-stricken forests, from California's giant sequoias to Germany's dying beech trees. Even the triggers align. Volcanic eruptions back then spiked CO2, just as our smokestacks and tailpipes do now. The fossil record shows how those ancient trees adapted, some evolving water-storing trunks like cacti, others developing deeper roots. But crucially, they had time. Today's forests face the same challenges compressed into decades, leaving little room for evolution's slow dance. Habitat fragmentation paints another eerie parallel. The petrified forest's upper layers reveal patches of lycophytes stranded in shrinking wetlands, their pollen counts dwindling as ferns took over. Fast forward to aerial views of the Amazon, where roads and ranches carve the green expanse into isolated islands. Studies prove these fragments lose biodiversity faster than continuous forest, just as the fossil record shows. When scientists examined the ancient fern takeover, they found it wasn't just climate change but disrupted seed dispersal, a warning for today's pollinators and fruit-bearing trees losing critical migration corridors. Yet the most sobering lesson lies in feedback loops. The Carboniferous forest's collapse altered global weather by releasing stored carbon from rotting biomass, amplifying the very changes that doomed it. Sound like a familiar script, modern deforestation doesn't just remove carbon sinks, it triggers cascading effects. When the Congo's peatlands dry, they release millennia of stored CO2. When Siberian permafrost thaws, it unleashes methane bubbles. The stones remind us, ecosystems don't collapse in isolation. They drag the planet's thermostat with them. But here's where the fossilized forest offers hope alongside warning. Buried in its layers are stories of resilience, pockets of conifers that weathered the chaos by evolving drought-resistant needles, or fungi that formed new symbiotic partnerships with struggling roots. Modern conservationists are applying these ancient survival strategies. Assisted migration programs help oaks and maples shift ranges northward, mimicking natural adaptation. Seed banks preserve genetic diversity as an insurance policy. Even the forest's most shocking revelation, that some species survived by retreating to microclimates like sheltered valleys, inspires today's climate refuge protections for critical old-growth stands. The stone's ultimate message isn't one of despair but perspective. They prove Earth has faced upheavals before and life persists, but rarely unchanged. The lycophytes that ruled the Carboniferous now survive as foot-tall club mosses in shady forest corners. Their descendants are shadows of former glory, yet they endure. For all our technology, we remain bound to the same ecological rules that shaped their fate. The difference is, we're the first species to read the warning in the rocks, and the last with a chance to rewrite the ending. As one paleobotanist put it while brushing ash from a fossil fern, the past isn't just prologue, it's the only survival manual we've got. The petrified rainforest's silent testimony spans 300 million years, yet today, these fragile stone chronicles face threats that could erase them in a geological blink. Across the globe, fossilized forests weather twin storms of natural decay and human recklessness. In Argentina's remote desert, wind scours delicate bark patterns from exposed logs at alarming rates. In Indonesia, illegal miners dynamite cliffs containing fossilized ferns, selling fragments to collectors for a fraction of their scientific worth. Even well-meaning tourists pose dangers. A single selfie seeker carving initials into Arizona's petrified would destroy more data than centuries of erosion. These aren't just rocks under siege, they're libraries of life's experiments burning page by page. But from Madagascar to Montana, a quiet army of conservators fights back using ingenious strategies. At Namibia's Petrified Forest National Monument, rangers coat vulnerable logs with invisible nanosilica treatments that mimic natural mineralization, strengthening surfaces against sandstorms. In Thailand's fossil-rich Korat Plateau, drones patrol protected zones, their thermal cameras spotting looters who once exploited the cover of darkness. Perhaps most revolutionary is the work of digital archivists teams laser scanning entire fossil beds to create millimeter-perfect 3D models, ensuring even if the originals crumble, their data survives in virtual vaults. The urgency stems from what these sites uniquely offer. Unlike isolated dinosaur bones, fossilized forests preserve entire ecosystems in situ, the spatial relationships between trees, ferns, and fungi revealing ancient survival strategies we're only beginning to decode. When conservators in Patagonia discovered a petrified log still rooted in its original soil, The surrounding pollen analysis revealed a prehistoric microclimate that thrived while neighboring areas dried, a potential blueprint for modern reforestation. Similarly, fossilized termite mounds in India's Guhua Fossil Park contain mineralized fungi that may hold clues for sustainable agriculture. Lose these sites, and we sever living threads connecting past adaptations to present crises. Legal protections are evolving to match their scientific value. Mongolia recently designated its stone forest a UNESCO Global Geopark, training former fossil poachers as tour guides, a model that slashed thefts by 80%. Meanwhile, U.S. paleontologists successfully lobbied to include fossil theft under the Archaeological Resources Protection Act, with penalties now matching art trafficking charges. Still, gaps remain. Most international treaties focus on vertebrate fossils, leaving plant fossils vulnerable. A single loophole allowed a Swiss auction house to legally sell a pristine Carboniferous fern slab last year, despite pleas from researchers who recognized it as a missing puzzle piece from an ongoing climate study. What makes these conservation battles worth fighting? Beyond their scientific value, fossilized forests serve as time-traveling classrooms. School groups visiting New York's Gilboa Forest site, home to Earth's oldest trees, participate in fossil forensics, analyzing mineralized root systems to understand prehistoric water cycles. In Brazil's Paleorota Geopark, visitors contribute to real science by photographing eroding fossils for a crowdsourced erosion tracking app. These experiences transform abstract concepts like deep time into tangible connections, proving stewardship isn't just about preserving the past, but inspiring future guardians. The petrified rainforest's ultimate paradox is this: having survived volcanoes and ice ages, its greatest threat now comes from creatures who can read its warnings. Each lost fossil isn't just a vanished artifact, it's a potential key to thriving on a changing planet. As one conservator in Madagascar remarked while stabilizing a collapsing fossil cliff, "We're not saving stones. We're safeguarding the only instruction manual Earth ever wrote for itself." The choice before us mirrors the forest's own history: adapt or perish. This time, the catastrophe isn't ash from the sky, but indifference at ground level. And unlike the Carboniferous giants, we're awake to see it coming. Gone are the days when studying ancient fossils required a plane ticket, hiking boots, and a chisel. Today, the wonders of the fossilized rainforest can unfold on your smartphone screen with startling clarity. Cutting-edge 3D scanning technology has transformed these stone relics into interactive digital models, allowing anyone with an internet connection to examine intricate bark textures or count the veins on a fern frond, no PhD required. The Smithsonian's Open Access Database, for example, hosts high-resolution scans of petrified wood from Arizona to Zimbabwe, each specimen rotatable to any angle with a finger swipe. Zoom in close enough, and you'll spot beetle borings in a lycophyte trunk so detailed you can almost hear the prehistoric crunch of mandibles on cellulose. But this isn't just about convenience, it's revolutionizing how science gets done. When a high school student in Norway noticed unusual branching patterns in a publicly shared scan of a horsetail fossil, her observations led paleobotanists to reclassify 3 species. Meanwhile, the University of Chicago's Virtual Petrified Forest project stitches together drone footage and ground-level scans into an immersive walkthrough where users can toggle between the fossilized stumps as they appear today and lush digital reconstructions of their living forms. The effect is like stepping through a time portal, watching stone dissolve back into chlorophyll-rich leaves as you walk through the understory, the real game changer. Collaborative platforms like Fossil Cloud, where researchers worldwide annotate shared scans in real time, One breakthrough came when a geologist in Brazil spotted mineral streaks in a German scanned log that matched volcanic ash layers from her own fieldwork, evidence of a previously unknown eruption that linked two fossil sites across ancient Pangaea. For amateur enthusiasts, apps like TimeTree let you virtually excavate fossils by brushing away digital sediment layers, revealing time-capsuled ecosystems one swipe at a time. The process demystifies paleontology, showing that discovery isn't just about daring expeditions, it's about patient observation, whether you're in a lab or your living room. Perhaps the most poignant use of this technology bridges generations. When the Natural History Museum of Utah digitized a collection of rare seed fern fossils, they included recordings of elderly Navajo elders recounting origin stories about stone trees, layering indigenous knowledge atop Western science in a way physical displays rarely allow. Now, a child in Window Rock can rotate a virtual specimen while listening to their great-grandmother's voice explain how the holy people turned arrogant warriors into petrified wood. The stones haven't changed, but who gets to hear their stories has expanded exponentially. Yet for all its promise, virtual paleontology raises new questions. High-resolution scans can't capture the scent of ancient resin still detectable in some freshly split nodules, or the way humidity makes certain fossils gleam with fleeting colors. And while digital access reduces fossil trafficking, some argue it also divorces specimens from their geological context. The slant of a trunk in situ might reveal prevailing wind directions, data lost when a fossil becomes a floating 3D model. Still, as climate change and budget cuts make field research harder, these digital surrogates offer hope. When wildfires threatened California's fossil beds last summer, rangers prioritized scanning over salvage, knowing pixels could outlast even fireproof vaults. The petrified rainforest's greatest irony: after enduring 300 million years of earthquakes and erosion, its most enduring legacy may lie in ones and zeros. Every uploaded scan, every annotated model, every virtual field trip ensures that even if the original stones crumble, their lessons won't. As one curator watching schoolchildren explore fossils via augmented reality remarked, "The best way to preserve the past isn't under glass, it's in the collective imagination." And in that boundless digital wilderness, the ancient forest lives anew, its stone whispers amplified across continents and generations. There's a primal wonder that takes hold when you stand before a tree that last felt sunlight 300 million years ago. Fossilized forests don't just belong to paleontologists, they captivate hikers who stumble upon their shimmering logs, artists who sketch their intricate grain patterns, and children who run their fingers over bark turned to cold stone. What is it about these petrified landscapes that transcends science and taps into something deeper? Perhaps it's the eerie familiarity. These were once living, breathing ecosystems after all. The same dappled light that filters through modern oak forests once danced between these very branches, now frozen in mineral silence. For travelers, these sites are pilgrimage destinations where time collapses. Visitors to Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park often describe an uncanny sense of connection, like walking through a cathedral where the pews are fossilized conifers. Some leave tokens at the base of particularly striking logs, a modern echo of ancient traditions that saw petrified wood as sacred. In Argentina's Sarmiento Petrified Forest, tourists whisper as if afraid to wake the stone giants, their camera flashes illuminating rainbow-hued quartz where sap once flowed. There's a humility that comes from confronting something older than entire mountain ranges, a reminder that human history is but a blink in Earth's epic. Artists have long been drawn to these natural monuments. Georgia O'Keeffe painted New Mexico's petrified logs with almost reverential strokes, capturing how light fractures through crystalline bark. Japanese woodblock printers depict them as yokai spirits of the land trapped between worlds. Even digital creators find inspiration. One viral TikTok series reimagined a carboniferous forest in vibrant CGI, its towering lycophytes swaying as dragonflies the size of eagles dart between them. The hashtag #FossilForest has millions of views, proof that these ancient stones spark creativity across mediums. Storytellers weave legends around them too. Local guides in Thailand's Ban Tak petrified forest recount tales of star-crossed lovers turned to stone by jealous gods, their forms preserved in intertwined trunks. Science fiction authors imagined petrified forests on Mars as evidence of lost alien civilizations. This interplay between fact and fantasy isn't accidental. The sheer improbability of wood becoming stone invites myth-making. When reality defies expectation, we reach for stories to bridge the gap. At their core, these sites evoke a bittersweet melancholy. They're graveyards where the headstones are trees, memorializing ecosystems lost to planetary upheaval. Yet there's solace in their endurance. A child pressing a hand against a fossilized fern in Berlin's Museum für Naturkunde isn't just touching a rock. They're making contact across geological epochs, feeling the weight of time's vastness. That emotional alchemy, where awe meets curiosity, where grief for lost worlds sparks determination to protect our own, may be fossilized forest's greatest gift. They remind us that beauty and impermanence are forever entwined, and that even in stone, life leaves echoes. The fossilized rainforest's final message isn't carved in stone. It's etched into the very air we breathe, the water we drink, and the delicate balance we too often take for granted. This ancient world, frozen in mineral silence, screams a warning across 300 million years. Ecosystems don't collapse overnight, but their unraveling leaves scars that last for epochs. Every stunted growth ring in those petrified trees mirrors the stress lines in today's drought-stricken oaks. Each fern spore preserved in volcanic ash whispers of habitats pushed beyond recovery. The parallels aren't just striking, they're terrifyingly precise. But here's the twist buried deep in the sediment of this story. The rainforest's legacy isn't just about loss. It's a masterclass in resilience written in cellulose turned to stone. Those towering lycophytes may be gone, but their descendants' humble club mosses still cling to life in shadowy forest corners. The giant horsetails vanished, yet their genetic blueprints live on in modern reeds that filter our wetlands. Even the catastrophic eruption that smothered this world inadvertently created a time capsule, gifting us the very tools to decode survival in the face of planetary upheaval. This duality, destruction and endurance, holds the key to our own crossroads. Unlike the Carboniferous plants, we're not passive victims of climate shifts. We're the architects of change, armed with something those ancient forests lacked: foresight. When indigenous communities in the Amazon employ controlled burns modeled after natural fire cycles, they're applying lessons older than civilization. When coral biologists seed reefs with heat-resistant algae strains found in fossilized microbial mats, they're thinking in deep time. These aren't just conservation strategies, they're acts of translation, decoding the stone forest survival manual for a modern age. Yet the most haunting question lingers like volcanic ash in the atmosphere. What fossils will we leave behind? Imagine future paleontologists chiseling through layers of our epoch. Will they find plastic-choked soil horizons marking a mass extinction? Or will they uncover bewildered landscapes where biodiversity thrived despite the odds? The difference lies in choices we're making right now, protecting old growth stands that serve as living libraries, or clear-cutting them into oblivion. The petrified rainforest's greatest gift isn't just its warnings, but its proof that life always finds a way. The story isn't over because we're still here to write it. Those stone trees never got a second chance, but we're holding one in our hands. Every preserved acre, every restored watershed, every policy that values ecosystems over short-term gain adds another line to this chapter. And perhaps one day, far in the future, some curious explorer will brush the dust from our era's fossils and marvel not at collapse, but at the moment humanity chose to really listen to the whispers of a forest.